Which brings us to the front bench contributions. Charlie Maynard.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm delighted to be speaking today on the issue of how we can fix our broken water and sewage sector and get serious about cleaning up our rivers and lakes. And I thank my honourable friend for Westmoreland and Lonsdale for bringing this debate. My constituency of Witney in West Oxfordshire has really borne the brunt of the sewage scandal. We've got many beautiful rivers flowing through it. We have the Thames that bisects it, we have the Windrush and the Evenlode and the Shilbrook to the north, we have the Ock to the south, and they are all heavily and frequently polluted. I welcome the calls from colleagues today to introduce a new blue flag status so that we can guarantee a river is clean enough to swim in. This would help it restore people's confidence in their swimming, and the bathing place at Witney would be a fantastic example. It's just north of Early's Mill, where generations of people have spent their summers swimming and no longer do. That we now know what a car crash our sewage network is thanks to so many campaigners who have gone to so much trouble on their own time and often their own money to bring this to our attention. And at the top of that star is WASP, so Windrush Against Sewage Pollution. That's Professor Peter Hammond, it's Ash Smith, it's Vaughan Lewis, and it's Jeff Toombs, who have worked tirelessly for the last 5 years to really highlight what has gone wrong. So many thanks to them and all the other citizens and scientists in my constituency and beyond who have done so much to bring this to national attention. And we owe them all a huge debt of gratitude. I'm going to focus today on the failures of regulation, specifically Ofwat's failures. Ofwat are responsible for holding water companies accountable against the terms of their operating licence. DEFRA has oversight over Ofwat, and DEFRA sets the policy framework and provides strategic guidance to Ofwat on key environmental and social policies. Ofwat is clearly, as many people have already said in this chamber, failing on pollution. So, Environment Agency's own data shows that in 2024, Thames Water discharged raw sewage of almost 300,000 hours, 50% up on its 2023 sewage dumping of 196,000 hours. That's well known. Ofwat is also failing to enforce financial viability. So Thames Water, which serves my constituency, just like every other water company in the country, has to have 2 investment-grade credit ratings. It hasn't had that for nearly a year now. Now, it's been beaten with limp celery, but that's about it. So it does have 19 billion of debt, headed quite possibly towards 23 billion of debt, and it has cash flows of just 1.2 billion. That obviously makes no financial sense. But yet, Thames Water is allowed to breach this rule with impunity. Now, no doubt, other water companies and companies in other sectors take note of what has been allowed by them and says, well, we can cross that line too. In water and in other regulated sectors. How is that good news? That introduces moral hazard, which does enormous damage to our country. And who are the ones who are ultimately paying the cost of all this debt and the enormous interest and advisory fees that go with it? Of course, it's the bill payers. So that's one thing. Ofwat then fails to provide value for money. As per the Water Industry Act 1991, Ofwat has a statutory duty to protect the interests of consumers and to protect the economy and efficiency on the part of water companies. As WASP recently published note on water companies' capital project costs, the costs that water companies are proposing are extraordinary. They're in some cases almost an order of magnitude higher than those in comparator companies in places like, well, companies in countries such as the USA and Denmark. Why is this? Why is this being allowed to happen? Why are our costs so much greater? Is it because our regulatory capital value pricing model is based off asset values and therefore gives an incentive to water companies to boost their asset bases? And they do this by extraordinarily long depreciation periods for network assets such as pipes, which were installed 50 years ago, but some have got depreciation periods of 100 years and are leaking like sieves. It also gives them an incentive to pour really, really expensive concrete. So why is it that something that you can build in Denmark costs 8 times the price over here? And why has, say, Oxford Sewage Treatment Works gone from 40 million to more than 400 million in terms of the planned spend in the last 4 years? What sort of inflation is that? Ofwat fails to provide fair pricing. Water companies have a requirement to demonstrate fairness, transparency and affordability to customers, which again Ofwat is supposed to uphold. Water companies have been allowed to hike bills this year, in the case of Thames Water, by 31%. My constituents have come to me and said they've received bills of 50-something percent, 70%, somebody even came with something which was more than 90%. And what are they getting for that? This is not fair when more than a quarter of the bills in Thames Water's case are just paying the interest. Not paying down the debt, but just paying the interest. So again, Ofwat is continuing to allow the pockets of water company creditors to be lined at the expense of ordinary households. Then Ofwat fails to be awake. So Ofwat has a responsibility, and bear with me on this one, for tracking who are the ultimate controllers of the water companies. That should be pretty simple. Who owns the water companies? Just keeping track of that. There aren't many of them. In Thames Water's case, they are taking willful ignorance to an extreme of utterly determined ignorance. Thames Water's largest shareholder, OMERS, wrote its stake down to zero last May in Thames Water. It pulled its directors off the board last May. When I got a letter from Ofwat last month saying, this has been widely reported in the press, this is not secret, and yet I got a letter from Ofwat confirming that no, they believe that OMERS is still the ultimate controller of the company. Why is Ofwat ignoring this? Why does it matter? Well, by being the ultimate controller of the company, it means that you've got certain responsibilities. Now, those responsibilities are just being ignored. And Ofwat, who is exactly the person who's supposed to be holding them to account, is hiding under a stone somewhere. They need to stop doing this.
Would you give way?
I'll be delighted.
I think on